Now, the defense minister of our country, Rajnath Singh, has counter-attacked China and rightly asked it, if India were to rename the regions of China, would they become part of Indian territory? The response comes after China, which has once again, in an act of transgression, renamed 30 places along the line of actual control in Arunachal Pradesh and claimed them to be part of China. It has sparked strong reactions from India. The opposition has in the past attacked the government of India and accused it of going soft on China, leading to China daring to indulge in more such acts of claiming territories of India as its own. The Congress raked up the Galwan skirmish and claimed that part of the Indian territory along the line of actual control continues to be in the control of the Chinese. I want to start my conversation. Joining me on the telecast, let's start off with Professor Madhav Nalapath. And Professor Nalapath, about the latest statement that has come from the Union Minister Rajnath Singh is perhaps one of the strongest statements that has been seen from India against the Chinese aggression and transgression that they have tried to do since Galwan skirmish.
I am very glad to see that very firm tone. I am also very glad to see that China has been named specifically, not only by the defense minister, but by the external affairs minister. Because the fact is, there are many people, including in India, who have this impression that the Chinese will be, quote unquote, reasonable. The fact is that the Chinese Communist Party regards as reasonable complete surrender by the other side. And what they do is to take over territory, and then if there is a big hubbub, withdraw from a little bit of the territory, and then wait for some time for matters to cool, and then grab more territory. They've been doing this systematically in our frontier and various other frontiers for decades now. And the reality is that it is an extremely aggressive country under the present leadership, especially. And it's good to call them out. The fact is, the world should know the situation. Till now, India has been very, very, if I may say so, understated about it. And as a consequence, it is very clear that China is the aggressor. But now the time has come to call them out. And they are being called out by no less than the defense minister and external affairs minister. The fact of the matter is, you can have 150 or 200 rounds of discussions with the Chinese side. Their idea of a fair compromise and settlement is when they get all that they want. Not even 99%, but 100%. And I think that realization is now very, very clear to all policymakers in Delhi.
Okay. Mahesh Sachdev, also joining me on the telecast. Thank you, Ambassador. And my first question, of course, there have been questions raised by the opposition parties within India against the government of India. When the Galwan skirmish happened, there were certain territories that had been taken control of by the Chinese troops, and including Demchok and Depsang plains that continue to be part of the Chinese PLA territory. In a situation such as this, where the opposition continues to attack the government, saying that because that territory has still not been taken control of by India, still not been reclaimed by India, it is giving more teeth to the Chinese to then act in such accusatory ways, act in such aggressive fashion to then go about renaming Arunachal territories and calling them their own.
That is likely practice, and they are acting in devious and conniving manner. Cartological aggression is the term that came out of 1950s first round of post-communist China, claiming territories which were actually not theirs. Their own tactical claim was that the agreements that defined the territories and borders signed by Chinese were under duress and they were unequal treaties. Who decides whether a treaty is equal or unequal? Chinese themselves decide, apparently. And lo and behold, an unequal treaty of yesterday is spurned, and an unequal treaty of today is being pushed down our throats. That is the manifestation of the adage that Mao had found. The power comes from the barrel of a gun. And that is a crude way of putting it. Whatever psychological or social psychological spin they have tried to put in terms of South Tibet, in terms of various other links for Buddhists and whatever kind, there is there's no missing the core theme of expansionism.
Okay.
And that is where we need to look at, and that is how we need to counter it.
Okay. Major General Shashi Asthana, while there have been several Corps Commander meetings that have taken place, I've lost count of the number of meetings that have taken place up until now, there has not been a conclusion that has come out of it. And as I was mentioning, certain smaller parts of Depchong, and when we talk about Depsang Plains, they continue to be in the hands of the Chinese troops. How do we find a resolution after the years that have passed by since Galwan?
See, as far as getting a resolution is concerned, for that, firstly, both sides have to agree. As far as Chinese are concerned, they are in no mood to agree. So therefore, the resolution can't be one-sided. Secondly, as far as China is concerned, this claim on Arunachal is absolutely bogus. It has got no legal standing. That linkage of that Buddhist linkage that Tawang was giving taxes to Potala, etc., that has got nothing to do with the boundary, because there was something called as McMahon Line signed between British India and Tibet. And even if they don't recognize, because they did recognize the inner and outer Tibet part of the McMahon Line at some point of time, although they had some kind of disagreement with in that context. But then the fact is that there was a line, and the vindication is that they did resolve the border with Myanmar on almost on the alignment of McMahon Line, if not exactly the McMahon Line. So therefore, and also it follows the watershed principle in some manner or the other. So therefore, this is a logical boundary which was there and has been there. So there is no evidence in history to say that China ever ruled Arunachal. There is no history of that kind. Conversely, there is a history of McMahon Line which exists on paper. So therefore, I think legally they are wrong. But what, as Ambassador was mentioning, this is called as cartographic aggression. They are trying to continue with cartographic aggression in a manner that initially you put up a claim and then you continue as what is something called as incremental encroachment strategy, which Professor Nalapat was trying to bring out, that you move and if somebody stops, you stop, and thereafter, even if you have to pull back, like with the action from Kailash range, they had to pull back. So they pulled back, and thereafter look for another opportunity. But now I think India is quite clear. India has given right messages. India has also physically on ground has also occupied areas in a manner that they don't move forward further. We know that they have violated the CBM and got the first movers advantage. That was one part of it. But then, notwithstanding that, I think Indian Defence Forces acted very swiftly to get the mirror image deployment and stop where they were. So that's one part of it. As far as these 2 points are concerned, what has happened is the patrolling has stopped. But then the converse is also true. Earlier, they were patrolling up to Gurtse. That we have also stopped. So it goes both ways. It's not one way. And secondly, certainly, unless there is a political will to resolve it, these Corps Commander level talks will continue. I don't think there will be any resolution till the time the political cost of not resolving becomes more than the political cost of resolving it. And that is why once that political cost is felt, the other side, then perhaps we may find that there is some movement or some forward movement towards the resolution.
Okay.
Till then, I do
Okay.
think there will be
All right.
something.
Important point made. Surinder Singh Lali, quickly a response from you about the strategic importance of India gaining back its lost territories. And like Major General Shashi Asthana was saying, that there needs to be political will and action needs to be decided when, where and at what time. And how do we then come to the conclusion that this would be the right place, right time to bring about a counter-offensive to get back our territories?
Thank you, Megha. And before I get to the 2 points which I wish to share, let me start on a note of levity. I mean, what if we were to name Hong Kong as Hanuman Nagar, Gwanja was Ganga Nagar, and Shanghai as Shamshad Nagar? And I'm sure the Uyghur Muslims would be very happy to hear the name Shamshad Nagar. Deception, stealth, and surprise is part of the gray zone warfare that the People's Republic of China tends to practice, or the wolf warrior diplomacy. Maybe I'm going to split this into 2 parts. Why do I feel that after 2017, China's really hit the gas pedal on their Arunachal? Because I think, first of all, they're very unhappy with the way we're securing our borders. I mean, in the recent past, out of the 118 projects, 58 of them were in Arunachal and Ladakh. So obviously, they're feeling insecure about it. And not to mention the Sala Tunnel, which the Honorable Prime Minister, recently inaugurated. I think China is also concerned about the new, the new strategic confidence that India is acquiring. And I think before they feel it gets too late, they want to, make these complications so that for future generations, they can be taken up. Now, what can we do? I think we should also, in return, challenge the one China narrative. We should strengthen our relationship more with Taiwan, which I feel is a win-win situation. Of course, Tibet also, which is supposed to be the autonomous region. And, the Inner Mongolia region, because China has also done things which we feel we can also now challenge, instead of us rotating around a boilerplate statement. Because if we don't push back, I think China is going to get more and more aggressive because it's getting more and more desperate with the inner economic situations, with the way, the new geopolitics is happening, especially, the post-Ukraine war and our relationship with America. So I think it's about time we push back. That's my limited response.
Okay, quickly coming back to you, Professor Nalapat, in a situation where China cannot be wished away, whether in terms of the strategic partner or we talk about the economic cooperation that China holds with across the globe. It is not to mention the second largest, most thriving economies of the globe. How do we maintain a balance in militarily pushing back China from our territories versus maintaining a status quo when it comes to our strategic interests, when it comes to our economic interests?
Look, the fact of the matter is, it is in our economic interest that a large number of foreign companies migrate from China to India. India is actually a much better platform than China of today for many of these lines of production that entered China in the 1980s, 1990s, and in the early part of this particular century. That is what is of great benefit to India. Secondly, it's of great benefit to India and that we reduce our dependence on China for a simple reason that it is very clear that the Chinese Communist Party is an expansionist party. It is a maximalist party. It looks for a maximal gain in any situation. And I think the less exposure we have to that kind of a country as a sourcing country, the better. Friendshoring is what is needed. And that realization is coming into other countries as well. You may have elites that have been captured by China. The CCP is very good at capturing elites, whether they're elite businessmen or elite politicians. They're very good at capturing that. But the people across different democracies have begun to understand the expansionism of China, and the elites are now facing tremendous popular pressure whenever they try and ensure that there is a pro-China tilt in their policy. In the case of India, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi has made it very clear from the start that the Indian interest is paramount, which is one reason why Chinese are very unhappy with him, as has been alluded to by the Colonel. Quite right. The fact is that we have to be firm on our strategic interest, and as far as our economic interest is concerned, it lies in our becoming a substitute to China. It lies in our becoming a platform for companies that wish to relocate from China and lowering our dependence on China. And that kind of a realization is coming across the world.
Okay.
And in the next 2 or 3 years, you're going to see an increasing flow of capital leaving China, production leaving China, and hopefully many of them will come to India.
Ambassador Sachdev, the same question to you. While India would want to be a global hub when it comes to the semiconductors, when it comes to the artificial intelligence, when it comes to other supply chains that are at this point of time being created in large setups that are being set up in various parts of our country, where when we are looking at institutional investors, when we are looking at direct investments coming in from other countries, India desires to be the global hub. But how do we ensure that the same supply chain relationship that China has with the rest of the world, and it has continued to have traditionally for several decades now, is broken, and it is to the advantage of India that it happens?
I think the steps in that direction are underway. Some of them were identified and spoken about by Professor Nalpat. I don't have to go back into that theme, but let me cite a Bloomberg report saying that by 2028, in 4 years' time, India's contribution to the GDP growth rate of the world, the new GDP being created across the world, would be higher than that of China. So China, instead of China being a driver of a global economy, as it is right now, India would become that global economy which contributes the maximum to the growth of the world, as GDP. So that is an extension of the past trends, and our approach towards that would define the further movement. I think I should also mention here that we need to have lower interest rates. For example, RBI's anti-inflation policy has to become more accommodative so that the credit to small and medium enterprises is given at a lower cost. Prime Minister himself hinted at that when he last week attended the 90th anniversary of RBI. And I think that is something very important. Secondly, I think we also need to work with the friendly countries to have greater investments in India. Indian FDI figures are actually lower than and falling in the past 2 years. Global FDIs have been falling across the world, but India's FDI input has gone down, I think, around 41% over past 2 years. So that needs to be reversed by more investment-friendly policies. Labor laws need to be changed, and government's own role with schemes such as PLI has to be further incentivized.
All right, sir. All right, I'm quickly coming back to you, Major General Asthana, and you were talking about political will that is required to then have a military action against the Chinese troops. Where do you see this going? Is after the 2024 elections, can there be a resolve built in that direction?
See, it depends on many factors. Today's world, it is a comprehensive national power of one country pitted against the other country. And therefore, when we are looking at China, we also have to look at the maritime. We have got certain advantages on the maritime domain where Chinese sea lines of communication pass. We also need to look at the various strategic partnership. As Chanakya has said, that you must build good alliances So we believe in alliances, but certainly good strategic partnerships to put a multi-front situation for China, and that multi-front situation is coming up. Quad, Malabar exercises, etc., etc. These are the steps in that direction. So as far as certainly every solution is not a military solution, because as was mentioned very rightly, there is an economic angle in the comprehensive national power. There are some economic dependencies which we have to get rid of. There are certain other measures. Diplomatically, I think diplomatic power is also very important, where India has got an edge. Because the kind of alliances and the kind of diplomatic clout which we have today is certainly better than China, which has annoyed quite a number of people. So that's one. So similarly, there are other angles like the technology, information, and all other channels of the comprehensive national power, which, if not alone, we can work out with our strategic partners, which is, I think, being done. So with everything put together, we may be able to put enough pressure on China to perhaps resolve certain things which need to be resolved in favor of India. So that's
fair enough. Quickly, Surinder Singh Lali, we've seen a parallel development that has taken place in South China Sea, where there have been expansionist actions, aggressive actions of transgression into the maritime territory of Philippines that has taken place. In reaction to that, Philippines at this point of time is holding joint Navy patrols with Australia and America together. Something similar is also being witnessed where the Japanese Prime Minister is in United States of America today. AUKUS is then going to be expanded, which will include Japan. This is to safeguard Japanese territory when it comes to the East China Sea and the larger concerns that the world and particularly America has in the Indo-Pacific region. How can there be ways that India can utilize certain such measures to ensure that the Chinese are retreating their troops from the regions that are contested?
Megha, for the record, the way China is claiming over 90% of the South China Sea is itself a great example of what we can expect from them. You know what, everything today is more to do with economics and geopolitics, because I think military is probably the last solution and not the most fruitful too. So I think we need to operate on our strength, which, as you said, is artificial intelligence. And we're a soft power. And once we create the economic heft, because we have such a big trade deficit with China too. And of course, once we do that, because, China's game is totally different. I mean, we still need many reforms before we can, compete with China in the FMCG or the brick and mortar industries, but we are a soft power. So I think that at home, and I want to keep my fingers crossed with elections around the corner, because a lot would also depend on, the jury's out in the next government to how that comes out, because we have to be all united at home and have enough strength in the houses to bring about the changes that we need in order to counter China.
Okay.
And
okay, all right. I'm out of time, but I thank all of you for sharing your views on this subject. On that note, I slip into a short break. Thanks for watching.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.